Poštovane gledateljice i gledatelji, dobar dan. U ovim trenucima diljem Europe mnogi mladi su zabrinuti skupim stanovima, skupim najmom stanova. Istovremeno radnike i obitelji brinu visoke cijene energetike. Novinari su zabrinuti pak mnogim zakonima u svojim zemljama koji sprečavaju slobodno izvještavanje. Problema je mnogo, a svima njima u Briselu bavi se jedna institucija koja nije toliko poznata širokoj javnosti. To je Europski ekonomski socijalni odbor. Danas u intervjuu 1 na 1 razgovaramo sa njenim predsjednikom. S nama je austrijski sindikalist, političar Oliver Ropke. Mr. Röpke, thank you very much for being us today and hosting us here in your institution, here in the heart of European Union. Many people would say European Union is a very nice place to live, especially if we look from abroad, but still there are many challenges. Every day we see youngsters claiming housing is too expensive, families complaining about energy prices, journalists say that the freedom is not freedom of expression is not at the level which would be generally accepted. So how do you see the current social situation in Europe?
Well, in general, I'm convinced that our economic and social model is still one of the best. And I think also we see that in surveys, European citizens are very much in favor of European democracy. But you are fully right. There are a lot of concerns at the moment. The cost of living crisis, for example, people struggle really to pay their rent, to pay their bills for heating. And this is a big issue. And it is true that people are expecting from Europe to deliver and to provide solutions and not only to discuss. Because this is actually what we promise. We say Europe has an added value. Many of the problems cannot be managed at national level alone, especially if we see that actually the whole European Union suffers from the same challenges, for example, housing crisis, then of course we need also European solutions. So I think this new mandate, and just now the new Commission takes office, this new mandate is really crucial. We have to deliver, otherwise we risk that again anti-European, populist or even extreme right tendencies will grow and will take over other countries, and we have to prevent this. And therefore our committee is strongly suggesting measures to cushion the impact of the cost of living crisis, for example, or the housing crisis. For instance, in a few days at our next plenary session, we will host a housing forum or housing summit with a lot of experts, politicians from across Europe and from Brussels, discussing new strategies. How can we make sure that prices will go down and that Europeans should benefit from affordable housing? We have a lot of suggestions from the European Economic and Social Committee, because currently only one figure, more than 40 million Europeans pay more than 40% of their household income only for housing. Yeah, this is unsustainable.
An enormous number.
Yes.
But maybe just to explain to people who are not familiar with the institution, so European Economic and Social Committee is composed by unions, so workers,
yes,
then employers, then representatives of different non-governmental organizations. So there are 329 members.
Right.
How that different groups cooperate together, and how is it possible to make common conclusions or policies?
Yeah, it's a valid question, because we see that in many countries we have growing polarization, and it's more and more difficult to find a consensus, joint proposals. I have to say I'm proud that here in the committee we still provide advice for the EU institutions, and in the vast majority of the cases we have opinions adopted in not consensus, but sometimes consensus, but with broad majorities. So our three groups, the employers' organizations, the trade unions and the civil society organizations, they bring in different perspectives. And in the end, it is important to involve as many stakeholders as possible. So this is also my ambition during my mandate, to open this committee, to make it more inclusive, more transparent, to transform it also to a convening space. And I think if we bring all the positions together, then in the end we are able to develop opinions which are still meaningful, with concrete proposals, but with a strong majority. And this is important because we are only an advisory body, so we are not decision makers in the hard sense like the Parliament or the Council.
But they have to listen to you, right?
Exactly. They have to listen to us, and I mean, it depends also on us, but we speak up loudly. We try to influence the decision-making process, to be part of the decision-making process. Hearings, summits, a lot of contacts with the politicians. And I think it shows that a lot of our initiatives are also taken into account by the Commission and by the European Parliament.
Would you say that the previous Commission listened to you?
Well, to a certain extent, I would say yes. There are different examples. For example, the Commissioner for Social Rights and Employment, Nicola Schmidt, addressed several times our committee, and he involved us at a very early stage, and also the Parliament involved us at a very, very early stage in their proposals. For example, on the famous minimum wage directive, which was one of the flagship initiatives of this commissioner, our committee delivered an opinion already before the proposal of the Commission was there. So we had already some ideas in which direction it could go. And then, of course, we had also an opinion on the actual proposal of the European Commission. But there are other examples. For example, our call for an EU Blue Deal to make a coherent and consistent water strategy a key priority for the Commission has been at least partly heard by the Commission. We can see that it's now in the portfolio of a commissioner. And there are a lot of other examples. But I would say in general, yes, we see more and more interest in our positions. And last but not least, the council presidencies, they invite us regularly to the informal council meetings, where we, and often myself, have the opportunity to present our ideas. And this is then discussed among the ministers. So I think this is a brilliant opportunity for organized civil society to bring in our voice.
Mm-hmm. You said this is the crucial moment. There is a new commission. We also mentioned that the big problem is housing. So while viewers from Zagreb watched us who are concerned about the housing prices, or people in Barcelona who are protested because of higher prices because of tourism.
Yes.
Is there any common ground? What do you expect? Is there any idea how to tackle that problem now in Europe, which we see it's the same in many parts?
Yes, there is common ground, and there are joint ideas. And I have to say, I was very glad to see that I had the opportunity to address the housing ministers from all EU member states some month ago in Liège during the Belgian presidency. And afterwards, they signed a Liège declaration. And many of the points actually were echoed from our committee, or were also ideas from our committee to create an action plan, to create a platform for affordable housing with a lot of concepts. And also, last but not least, to provide new forms how to finance this, because it's not enough to have nice concepts. We have to provide also financial means. And our committee was among the first who said we need also a stronger role of the European Investment Bank. And I'm glad that President Nadia Calviño confirmed this. And we will see in which form. But you can see that this new platform for financing affordable housing is now also part of the mandate for the responsible commissioner, Mr. Jurgensen. So I think we are on the right way. But once again, we have to deliver. We have to deliver. We cannot afford that in 3, 4, or 5 years the situation has not improved. I think this would be very dangerous for Europe's future.
Is there any good example in Europe? Some people say in your home country, Austria, that Vienna did something good in that sense. Is that true? And what did they do? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, as an Austrian, I have to say, but I'm convinced that it's true. I think Vienna shows that a long-standing strategy for affordable housing with different instruments can really ease the situation. And at the same time, we have to say there's no one-size-fits-all. So the situation in Vienna is that since the 20s of the last century, actually the government of the city has fostered the construction of affordable housing. Even municipality owned housing, but also other forms of affordable housing. And in the end, more than 50% of the citizens in Vienna live in this kind of housing. So this is important to avoid ghettos, to have a better mix of population in different districts, and it's also mitigating the high prices on the free market. So I think in the end there are a lot of things to do also in Vienna, but I think it is a brilliant system, and it can serve also as a good example
for the whole EU.
For the whole EU, yes, I think especially for when we talk about Vienna, then maybe especially for cities. It depends also on the region, but I think there's a great interest also of other cities. I know that they come regularly to Vienna, and also the representatives and the mayor of Vienna is in Brussels from time to time to present these ideas. And I'm happy to explore with the new commissioner some ideas how we can support this kind of affordable and decent housing also at European level.
Mm-hmm. This is definitely something which concerns workers. You are also a member of unions.
Yes.
Of course, nowadays also politician. Do you think people still believe in unions?
Yes, I'm convinced. I know that the technological change and also now the digital transition brings a lot of challenges for existing structures, also for the unions. But we can see at the same time in many parts of the world, even in Europe, we see also a revival of trade unions when it comes to platform work, for example. Those workers need a strong voice for their interest more than ever. And who could be this strong voice others than trade unions? So I think, yes, they need the trade unions. Of course, trade unions have also to adapt their some of their working methods to approach new forms of work. But in general, I'm convinced that that they are necessary. And at European level, actually, we recognize this need because there is a clear commitment of the European Commission to foster social dialogue. Social dialogue takes place between social partners, and one side is the trade unions. So we need strong trade unions. Also, another example, if we want to achieve the goals of the minimum wage directive, decent wages for everybody, then the directive says clearly the best way is to increase collective bargaining coverage. So to increase negotiations between social partners. And here, for this, you need strong trade unions. And last but not least, a recent example at the global level. I had the pleasure to attend the G20 social summit in Brazil. In Rio. It was the first time that this kind of summit took place in the context of G20, and it was a big achievement of President Lula da Silva. And for us as civil society, and especially for me also as ESC president, it was an opportunity to join forces with civil society there. And definitely trade unions played also a central role. So I think also at global level we have seen that we need strong and empowered civil society and especially social partners.
Of course, the president also came from trade unions, so yes, obviously he's also interested to put much more emphasis and to make them stronger.
Yes, but he achieved a strong declaration among all G20 countries. And you know, there were quite different countries, from BRICS countries to NATO countries, from the north to the south. They agreed to have also a strong social pillar, a strategy against hunger and poverty, a new global governance. So I think this was also a big achievement because everybody agreed in the end. And I think we have to keep this momentum. And I'm quite, I trust the South African government as new G20 presidency to continue this initiative.
Mm-hmm. So as you said, unions protect workers, but Mr. President, who will protect journalists and workers in journalism? Because last few weeks ago, actually, you organized here a very interesting seminar where it was warned on a really tough situation in journalism. It's not only working conditions, but there are also some threats, even big number of deaths among journalists. So how to tackle that problem, and how serious is the problem in media nowadays?
Yes, I think we see alarming signals in some member states. Some member states, the environment is more and more difficult for journalists, but then we see also more and more attacks, direct attacks on journalists. We see smear campaigns, we see even physical violence. So the working conditions for journalists are more and more difficult. And here, I think you ask absolutely the right question. We have also the European Federation of Journalists, and they were here when we had our seminar with journalists, how to protect free and independent journalism. But we have also to insist that the framework conditions have to be strengthened, because free journalism is not only a profession, it's a fundamental right and a fundamental need for free societies, for democratic societies. So therefore, here in the committee, we are absolutely committed to this. As you said, we have hosted this important conference, but we do it through the whole year, actually, that we support journalists, that we raise the awareness about the situation of journalists, for example, in Belarus, also those who are in exile now. And we insist that the protection of free journalism must be high on the agenda, including, I would say, to make sure that we will have more economic space for them, because we can see that there's more and more economic pressure on free journalism. So we need systems in member states, for example, public media, free, public and independent media, that have to be strengthened. At the moment, unfortunately, the situation is worrying and goes in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and it's not only in maybe underdeveloped countries or less developed, let's say. We see this also in Western democracies, that system has problems.
Yes.
But when talking about other countries, you quite often travel also to some other countries which are not part of the EU, like Western Balkan. Recently, you visited Bosnia and Herzegovina. What kind of meetings did you have there, and then what is the outcome?
Yeah. I have to explain maybe the bigger picture, because I would say my flagship initiative during my mandate was to be an advocate for civil society in candidate countries, in enlargement countries. So we offered all Western Balkan candidate countries and the Eastern neighborhood, including Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, and also Turkey, because it's a candidate country, to involve for the first time ever as an EU institution, to involve civil society and social partners from these countries in our advisory work, in our daily work. It was a landmark decision, I have to say. It was not easy. And now we can say that those colleagues, more than 140 so-called enlargement candidate members from all candidate countries, work alongside our members on opinions. They bring in their knowledge, the perspective of their country, for example, on cohesion policy, on youth policy, on food security. So on crucial matters for citizens and civil society in these countries. And I have to say the first results are brilliant. The civil society in these countries is empowered, and they feel for the first time to be gradually involved in the EU. And this is actually in the core of this initiative. And therefore I travel now often to these countries to meet also with our new members.
Could we say that this is maybe the first door for people in Western Balkan countries to entering if not the European Union, but values of the European Union through this cooperation?
Yeah, I would tend to say yes. We can call it like this. We have traditionally bilateral, trilateral bodies here in the House, so-called joint consultative committees with the countries that are negotiating already the enlargement. And in these committees, we meet together with civil society, the government from these countries, the EU Commission, and we monitor the enlargement and accession process. But our initiative now goes a step further. It grants already somehow partial right to act like a member in the EU, and I think this is a good experience for the colleagues. They can also see that we have to stop our empty promises especially to the Western Balkan countries. We have to move forward with tangible results, and hopefully with the accession of some countries in the next years.
And what did they tell you? I mean, like civil societies, when do they complain about maybe about politicians in their country, governments, or what is which concern them most?
Well, I would say the most fundamental question and also concern is to be really fully involved in the procedure, to build up civic space, strong structures for civil society, but also for social dialogue, for social partners. In many cases, they think that they are not heard appropriately, and sometimes structures are not appropriate and must be enforced. So this is, I would say, the first concern, because enlargement can be only successful when it's inclusive and when civil society, also journalists, trade unions, employers' organizations are fully involved in this. So here we are always asking to make sure that everybody is involved. And then, of course, country-specific concerns are freedom of media, questions sometimes of corruption in some countries, judicial systems. So it's a wide range of concerns.
Yeah, and then some people say there is a fatigue in Western Balkan countries because it's a very long process. You also said your home country is traditionally connected to
Yes.
that part of Europe, while in the same time there are some concerns in the country, especially regarding illegal migration. So what is your view then on enlargement and also of this institution?
Yeah. Well, I can say concerning Austria, I have to admit that Austria is one of the biggest supporters of enlargement and welcomed also our initiative very much. And I think across political parties, not all the parties, but I would say the majority of the parties are supporting this. And the view in our committee is equally positive towards enlargement. But we say clearly, for us, enlargement has to be, and accession to the European Union has to be predictable, it must remain credible and transparent. So it must be, first of all, merit-based. We don't put this into question. But if countries make efforts, then we can already grant them with some rights of integration. I think we have not to wait until the actual enlargement to give them all the rights and before they have nothing. It must be gradual. And this is actually what we try here in the House. And there was a huge majority and support for this idea. And now we live this. And yeah, we try to support them. To be clear, it's not necessarily to accelerate accession procedures. It's to empower civil society, to help them to meet the standards, the benchmarks of the European level, for example, when it comes to social dialogue. And then in the end, I think it can have a positive impact that some countries can join the European Union sooner.
Yeah, and there's also some countries into the EU who are not so happy, like Romania and Bulgaria, claiming that they are part of the club, but not fully because they're not fully into Schengen zone.
Yes.
But a few days ago, the kind of the process advanced. So it was a meeting in Budapest, a ministerial meeting, when it was said that Austria gave kind of green light for them. How do you see that? And then will be any opinion of your institution on membership of Bulgaria and Romania?
In the Schengen zone?
Yes.
Yes, I can proudly say that we were among the first who issued a resolution when, a month ago, Romania and Bulgaria were not accepted in the Schengen area. We issued a resolution. It was, I think, even unanimously adopted in our committee, clearly saying when these countries comply with the requirements, and the Commission clearly confirmed this, then they have to join the Schengen area. So we were always very much in favor, and therefore I'm glad that we are now moving forward with this.
Do you also think that the mood is changing in your country, Austria, regarding the Schengen zone and Austria and Bulgaria and Romania?
Yeah, of course there are some concerns also connected to the question you mentioned with migration. There are a lot of fears. Also populist parties really fueling these fears, I have to say. But in the end, I'm sure that we can manage these challenges, and in the end, it will be added value for all of us. So if Romania and Bulgaria are fully integrated in the Schengen zone, and a year after we will see that there was no massive impact, then I think also in Austria there will be a broad support for this decision.
Mm-hmm. And for the end, in the forthcoming days or weeks, you will also talk to probably members of the new commission, which is formed. So what is your expectation for next 5 years?
Well, this commission comes at a crucial time. I mean, we had the election in the US, and we have also challenges within the European Union. I think the biggest task for the commission is to keep Europe united and to make sure that we stick to our basic values, which is democracy and the rule of law, and to have a credible voice also at the global level. I think this will be crucial. And as I said at the beginning, we have to deliver on the concerns of people. We are working now very soon on a set of opinions to fight the cost of living crisis, because even if we see that inflation rates came down, we haven't tackled the problem yet, because the high inflation from the last 2 or 3 years is still there and people are struggling with this. So we will have concrete proposals from different angles how to tackle this. And I expect from the Commission to enter in negotiations and in cooperation with us and to take our proposals on board. And the last point, or the third point I would like to mention, again, enlargement. I think this must be a period where we make substantial progress with enlargement. So once one country, for example Montenegro, will fulfill the criteria, I think then we need also a success story. And I hope that in the next years, in this mandate, we will see that one or more countries can join the European Union. But we have to make sure that the criteria are fulfilled, and especially that civil society, social dialogue, collective bargaining must be guaranteed. So we have to take the lessons from previous enlargement rounds when we actually cared too late about this, and we have to make it right now. And therefore our initiative, and I'm looking forward that we can even enhance this enlargement candidate members initiative.
Then, Mr. Röpke, we will finish with that positive message. So to people who maybe think that they're not heard into the European Union, like workers, journalists, you said they're heard. Also some countries, candidate countries, which also think they're not heard here. You confirm they're heard and that you will work on benefits of them. So then let's see what the future bring with the new commission. Thank you very much for this interview and for hosting us here in your institution.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Poštovane gledateljice i gledatelji, ovo je bio još jedan intervju 1 na 1. Do idućih europskih razgovora srdačno vas pozdravljamo iz Brisela.